But hello and welcome. This is the What We Can Learn from Animals panel, which is, the answer is hint, hint, everything. And I will not, I'll be in here, but you know, this is not my panel. It's just something that I really care about. To put in perspective, I always thought I was a crazy animal lady, and then I met Daniela. And wow, I have a long way to go in my collection of strays. But I did want to show off two things in honor of animals and everything. Check out my cool shirt. Trust me, I'm a doctor. Because we can learn everything from animals. And the other thing I wanted to quickly show you, because it didn't even occur to me until 10 minutes ago, I have a book about animals. It's called Sailor's Tale. And it's a children's book, and it's on Amazon, and it's about my doggy Sailor, who was here until about 2 seconds ago. But it's a story of and going home and having a family, me. Anyway, I think it's good. Okay, shameless promotion over. Welcome everyone to our Awake, Aware, Arise session on what we can learn from animals. And I would let these ladies do their thing because they have a flow planned, so I won't introduce them other than they are 3 other crazy animal ladies. So today you have 4 of us, and if you too are a crazy animal lady or gentleman, please tell us. Instead of just telling us where you're from, tell us how many dogs and cats and parrots and whatnot you have.
And octopuses.
Oh, well, hopefully you have no pet octopuses. Hopefully you're just learning from the octopuses. But yes, I want to hear how many animals are in the family today. But yeah, I'm going to go on mute and I'm going to let Kelly run the show.
Hi, Magda. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. My name is Kelly Wendorf, and I'm here with Daniela and Emma, my new friends. And thank you to Coach Aria and this Awake, Aware, Arise event that we could do this. Especially at this time when we're navigating so much uncertainty. Just a little housekeeping thing. I think everybody already knows how to handle their Zoom. We'll be playing with chat as well. The flow of the hour and a half together is that you'll be hearing from Emma, then Daniela, then myself, about 10 minutes each. And then the 3 of us will have some dialogue together because we have all slightly different orientations towards the animals that we work with. But complementary as well. And after that, we're going to open to Q&A and really get interactive there. So that's sort of the flow of the day. Yeah, so I'll hand it over to Emma. Over to you.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. I'll tell you a little bit more about me first. She says, hopefully I can switch from one to the other. And so this is my beautiful girl Flickr. Or it will hopefully be to start off with. No, we've gone too far. Let's go back a bit. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit first about resilience and synchronicity, 2 things which are really important to me. So I'll tell you a little bit first about myself. So I'm Emma. And my history has been very much affected by, my history with animals is very much affected who I am and how I work with both people and with animals. So I'm literally just straight back out of the forest from working with some people who are having some trouble with their dog and my life very much around the problems that people have with their animals. So I started as a teacher before moving into educational consultancy and then to leadership consultancy. And I worked with all kinds of large organizations involved in a change agenda, you know, sometimes more than 15,000 people. And I gained my postgraduate qualifications based on this work. So I was very much interested in how we coach human clients, whether as individuals or as organizations, through change. And I know how much conflict and resistance there can be to change and to development. So my work there was very much rooted in Gerard Egan's skilled helper model. And I was looking, and I think this is very important to me, about working with clients on the issues that matter to them rather than giving them advice or expecting them to just follow blindly the things that I'm saying. So as he says in The Skilled Helper, helping is not something that helpers do to clients. It's a process that helpers and clients both work through together. So no matter whether I was consulting in big multinational companies or working as a coach to help clients like choose a new career, for instance, my work was very much about helping the client find their own inner resources to solve the problems that were important to them. And now I find myself in rural France, where I'm still involved in education. I'm assistant principal examiner for the biggest cohort of exams in England, where we've got over 2,000 teachers marking exams and over 600,000 students. But I'm also, and this is the love of my life, I'm a trustee in one of France's largest shelters. So we're an open access shelter, which may not mean very much to many of you, but it means that we don't get to pick and choose who we take and who we don't. And we also try really hard to rehome all of our wards, be they feline or canine. We sometimes have occasional pigs and guinea pigs and parrots and ferrets and things like that as well. But mostly we're animals, cats and dogs. And we have about 500 at any one time on site. So we don't euthanize except for medical reasons, generally speaking. But it is a constant battle to find dogs for homes for dogs who are a little bit more challenging at times. So we're a mixed urban-rural shelter, so we get problems with status dogs who are sometimes used by those hyper-masculinized young men as a status symbol or protection in an urban world. But we also get working dogs, hunt dogs, hounds, gun dogs, guard dogs, and we get an awful lot of mutts as well. So I'm a certified animal behaviour consultant for shelter dog behaviour with the International Association for Animal Behaviour Consultants. And I work with human clients in pre-surrender situations as well as in post-adoption. Most of my work is with aggressive dogs, but some is with fearful dogs like these two here. And I realised that my work is very much rooted still in Egan, just as much as it ever was when I was a leadership consultant. And I'm still most efficient from when change is a process through which I help clients, be they canine or human, and where they're working through things with me rather than when I'm taking on the role of the expert or diagnosing their problems and prescribing a treatment. So my work means very much working with clients, both human and canine, to solve problems before they arrive in the shelter, and supporting our clients who've adopted dogs and clients from other associations who've adopted dogs and they're finding difficulty adapting. So I've got 2 dogs. You want to know about my animals, and my 2 current dogs. I always say current dogs. It's like saying the current Mrs. Jones or the current Mr. Husband. And one's just come over to say hi. She's Liddy, my little fire starter, who's on the left there. She's Belgian Malinois, and her life was dependent on her being able to adapt to our human world, and that needed her to put conflict aside, because really, you know, she was in a situation I was explaining just earlier to my previous client, where I was asked to make an assessment about whether she could form a bond with a human person or not, because she struggled so much in the shelter that we really didn't think it was viable to rehome her. So Liddy is my little fire starter. And then my boy Heston, he's a Belgian sheepdog mix who arrived in a box. He was about a day old. He's on the right there, when he'd just been born and abandoned. So for Liddy, it was very much about understanding her needs. In the past, the more humans had tried to force her into compliance, the more resistance she put up. So the more they tried to make her fit into the world and force her to adapt to the human world, the more she resisted, usually by using her pointy teeth there. And eventually that resistance to change really threatened her very existence in itself. And she ended up at a real high risk of euthanasia because of that behaviour. Heston's always been my boy, and like a proud parent, I can, you know, happily provided what I hope is gentle guidance and hopefully giving him an environment in which he can flourish. And our relationship has very much always been a dance. So in my youth, I practiced many martial arts. I did jiu-jitsu and judo and karate as well. But my favorite always was capoeira, the Brazilian martial art, in which 2 combatants, you can see 2 guys here practicing that, engage in non-contact sparring. If you've ever seen capoeira, it can be super fast. You can also do it really slow. And you're waiting for that moment where contact will be made, and it's never made. But what I learned from capoeira was that I learned when to lead, when to give, when to attack, when to defend. And together with the music, because it's very much in time with the music, Sometimes you slow down, sometimes you increase the tempo, and you're recognizing things when your partner needs to speed up or slow down as well. But for me, capoeira is a perfect metaphor for my philosophy of our lives with animals, that it's really a non-contact dance where there's no one leader, there's no master. Power is shared, and at times either opponent can lead. And I think that's very much affected how I view my relationship with humans, that you observe your opponent or the person that you're involved within that relationship in the moment, and you watch and you synchronize. And no matter how fast you go, how acrobatic it becomes, how many feet are flying around and fists are flying around, contact is never made because you're in synchronicity. And I think this very much affects my understanding of relationships, both personal relationships and professional relationships, and whether that's interspecies with humans or interspecies with the other animals around me, whether they're domesticated animals or wild animals. So despite my
to interrupt, Emma, you're not actually sharing your slides.
Aren't I?
I don't want to break your flow.
Oh no.
It's okay. Well, we'll put them up on the vlog later anyway, but if you want to just try to share them again.
Okay, will do. I don't know what happened there.
I went to just wait until.
Yeah, I went to share slides and obviously not particularly done a really good job in doing it. It says, there we go. I won't run you back through them because that will be very tedious.
We still can't see them, so click on share screen.
Yeah, I'm doing it.
Okay. Okay.
And then just go to, where are you? I can't find my button. There we go.
There we go. And now we can see the edit mode. And then
nothing, now it's loading.
Oh, no. You're already sharing, so you can close that.
Yeah. Where am I? Stop.
Oh, no.
No, I can't get off the... Oof.
Click on the screen somewhere.
I'm trying. I am trying. Nothing sharing now. Hang on, let me stop the share and let me try again. Oh, I don't know what's...
It's okay. Technical
difficulties. I know, technical difficulties have been the bane of my week.
Same here.
Hey, right, let me try again. So.
At least everyone connected. We had a session earlier this week when the Zoom wasn't working at all, so that was fun.
Yeah, I know. Right, hang on a second. I don't know. My computer also doesn't like working at the same time as Zoom, so sometimes it struggles. Okay. It's old. Right, share screen. Share this screen. Share. Present.
Okay, looks like it's starting to share.
There we go.
Waiting for it to load. And it's loading. Yes, I am definitely just reading what's on the screen.
Oh, this is tedious because my internet now is just deciding, I can't run Zoom at the same time as other things.
Maybe you don't share the slides. Maybe you shouldn't have been.
There we go.
Yay!
We got there, finally. So despite my 2 dogs and the fact that most of my work is with dogs, I was largely a cat lady for most of my adult life. And I think that's mostly affected as well my approach to animals. So like dogs and horses, it's unlike dogs and horses, it's much more difficult to do things to cats. And I find cat people, especially if they're in a safe rural area like I've always been, or quiet suburban areas, they tend to live a much less, a life that's much less about compliance and about dominance and submission with cats. For instance, just an example of my own experience. My cats they've always had their own door. They were in charge of when they came in and sometimes who they even came in with. And they were in charge of their own rhythms. They could come and go as they pleased. They ate when they asked, and they often refused food and turned their nose up at things that they didn't want to eat. And those things that they didn't approve of. So if we're talking about agency, and my cats had so much more agency than their dogs, that they were in charge of their own lives, that they were in charge of the things that they wanted to do, whereas my dogs depend on me to open the door, and they're constrained by fences and gates and leads and rules, and they just don't have that same freedom of the neighborhood like my cats did, and sometimes would end up in my neighbors' houses. Certainly my dogs don't do that. And my dogs now eat at set times, and they don't have that same agency to be able to come and express those things to me. So because I think I came from because of that cat background, I think I was less obsessed by asking my cat to sit and wait or making sure that their bladders and bowels moved on my say-so. And I respected their catness. And the more I learned about my cats, the more I respected that catness. You know, knowing their preferred food, their preferred resting spots, the things that they like to do, and when they wanted to initiate contact with me. Whereas I think sometimes dog people come at it a very different direction, that they're the ones who are always initiating contact. So I was very respectful of that catness. And now I find that most of my work as a behaviour consultant is about asking guardians to respect the dogness of their companions. So in his book about hyenas in Ethiopia, writer Marcus, what's his name? Marcus Baines Rock, he gives an example of how the humans assess collaboration in animals. So one way that we can see whether animals are collaborating is to give them a task where some food is attached to 2 ropes, and both animals have to collaborate and pull both ropes together. And it's to assess the extent to which animals are collaborating. And they have to use equal force in order to do that. And they can only get the food resources if both animals pull. So wolves, for instance, are very good at doing this task, and monkeys are very good at doing this task. Humans less so, I guess. But dogs often fail in this task, and they're not used to collaborating together. And the writer, when he's not talking there about hyenas doing this task, because it's not a task that has been given to hyenas to do, but he refers to this as a metaphor for that constant to and fro of needs. And he also remarks that power and powerlessness emerge in unexpected places. I love that idea that sometimes when we're collaborating, we can certainly reveal our powerlessness or allow ourselves to be powerless, and to give a little rather than to always be taking. Because if the animals pull really hard on the rope, then the food falls off the little tray that it's on. So sometimes you've got to relinquish power as well in order to let the other animal lead the way, if you like. So he talks about when we engage in observation of other species, and when we recognize their needs, when we learn to speak for them, then we're doing our part in pulling that rope, if you like. And when they choose to engage with us and learn about us, then they're doing the same thing. So the dog I was just working with this afternoon is very aggressive towards humans, and it was very much about, you know, allowing him to pull that rope and allowing him to do the observation and to learn about me without any pressure on him. And we're both pulling on that collaborative rope. We've got no food, you know, to gain in so doing, only knowledge about the other. But as he says, in understanding the other, we come to understand ourselves. And I think that's really important about my work with animals. So hopefully we're moving on to slide 7, she says. Now I can't find my mouse. It's a technical disaster this afternoon. So what I bring to my relationships with dogs from all of this is the notion of letting them lead. And I didn't bring this kind of dominance notion, this power notion to my relationship with the dogs, simply because I've lived peacefully with cats and with other animals, and without even ever thinking that I need to be their master or pack leader. So I brought with me this ability to watch and to listen, to tune into their frequency and to listen to their needs. Instead of resolving conflicts all the time with attempts to master my dogs, I brought with me the desire to understand their problems and to resolve conflict by understanding their needs, to pull on those ropes together. Philosopher Mark Rowlands, in his book, The Philosopher and the Wolf, he recounts a first people story about a society who found themselves in conflict with local wolves. And at first, the instinct of the humans is to eliminate the wolves, to hunt them down, to exterminate the threat. But what they realised, where they realised the conflict came from, was the fact that the village had moved into the wolves' territory, and they were not considering the voice, the needs, and the requirements of the wolves. So from that day forth, they decided to always appoint a person who would speak for the wolves, always asking at their council meeting, who speaks for wolf? And in many ways, that's kind of become my mantra. who speaks for dog. But that's the same with any other species. So when I'm clearing out one of the outbuildings, I live on a small, a very small farm, and when I was clearing out one of the outbuildings, I was very conscious of the fact that there are swallows nesting in there and bats nesting, roosting in there. And I have to ask myself at those moments, who speaks for bat? Who speaks for swallow? And what is it that I need to ensure that I don't change, or that I do change, to make their lives easier and to be respectful of their existence around mine? And it always makes me laugh when my dad came around once and he says, "You've got a rat in your back garden." And I said, "Yeah, he's fine. We're living in that synchronicity. I don't go out when he's out. He doesn't go out when I'm out. We both try not to scream at each other." But by asking who speaks for rat and what does the rat need, we can actually live a harmonious life in which he's not a vermin, he's not a threat to my food sources. We just kind of coexist in a way that's kind of curious and interesting. And I leave him little presents. Luckily, he doesn't leave me any little presents, because I'm pretty sure they wouldn't be nice presents. But asking that question always, who speaks for this animal, who speaks for this species, I think is perhaps the most important thing that animals have taught me. So through that observation, through learning, through understanding what the animals in our lives need and what requirements they are, whether they're wild animals, whether they're domesticated animals, whether they're animals we consider to be vermin, respecting those needs resolves a lot of conflict. And whether that comes from our relationship with wildlife or companion animals, with livestock, domesticated animals, or even insects, understanding their worldview, their needs, their inner lives, resolves much of that interspecies tension. So just on to the last bit here. So taking this approach has also helped me with my own personal growth and understanding that we're part of a rich tapestry of existence at this remarkable moment in time, understanding our place in that tapestry and understanding how our behaviour affects others. As we go back to Daniel Goleman's tenets about emotional intelligence, we know that this requires us to recognise emotions in others and to handle relationships. And he writes at one point that leadership is not domination, but it's the art of persuading people to work towards a common goal. And I think that idea is something that animals have taught me. But there is no persuasion in a human-animal relationship. There's only recognition of common goals and working towards those in harmonious ways. So for me, true leadership, whether that's with humans or with animals, comes from a true understanding of everybody's needs and an ability to negotiate settlements with them and to compromise. And that can only come via our understanding, and by empathy. And sometimes by relinquishing power and realizing, coming back to that metaphor about the rope, that we've got to sometimes relinquish our power in order to let the other lead the pace, in order to get the rewards and the reinforcement that we're looking for in life. So in turn, these skills that come from observation, from listening and from learning about others, they all teach us about ourselves. And so I think that for me is what I've learned about myself from animals as much. So I'm going to pass over now. Thank you very much for putting up with my technological incapabilities, and hopefully other people won't have the same issues that I have in not being so technically savvy.
Maybe it's better with
Okay,
if I unmute myself.
I was going to ask who's next.
Much better if I unmute myself. So I'm Daniela Simionescu. I live in Brussels, in Belgium. I have decided this morning not to show any slides. I have prepared some, but I decided particularly I'm quite emotional about the topic, and it's not something I get to talk about every day. So I hope I will be able to be legible enough so that you can follow what I have to say. And I would feel like framing, before talking about the exact topic of our panel today, what we learn from dogs and from other animals that we are living with. I would like to frame it both as a coach and one of the most delicate realizations I came to, which is that when you deal with dogs, it's not that much about dogs, and that it's a lot about humans. This is where the coach has a lot to say and to do. This is where the coach needs to be present and attentive, and this is where the coach can intervene a lot, particularly in supporting rescuers, if we talk like Emma is working in a shelter, when you talk about rescuers and volunteers, people volunteering for the shelters, or simply veterinary professionals, it's a lot about talking what is happening in both ends of the lead. It's not about the dog mainly, it's also about the other side of the other end of the leash, where you have the human with his or her emotions, with more or bigger or less understanding of what's happening on the emotions that the dog is having. So all these frame a very complex landscape, and I think that whenever we speak about dogs, we need to have all this big umbrella in mind that helps us to understand and maybe to help better dogs behave better in the life that we propose them. Because dogs, they don't have the choice to live with us. They have to live with us. We may decide to have a dog or not, but they cannot decide they don't want to live with us. So this brings me back to how I started being in the rescue and dealing with dogs. When of course, as usual, it started by adopting a dog and then realizing the extent of how big the whole issue is, how many dogs, and particularly when I was dealing with dogs in Spain and in Romania, where the situation is really, really very difficult and very dangerous for dogs. There is not much about dogs as such. It's about how humans imagine and how humans think about dogs, how humans legislate about dogs. So when you are dealing with these issues, it's not about helping a specific dog, which is very important, of course, but it's also about keeping in mind also if you can help a bit improving the whole framework in which dogs are helped, the whole vision that the society holds about dogs. If it's, as Emma mentioned before, dominance, or if it's positive reinforcement, it's free force approach, it's not the same. If we think that we have to dominate dogs because otherwise they would dominate us, we are in a big problem, and the whole society will have put in place mechanisms and tools to prevent that from happening, and this will not ever be good for people or for dogs. And now I can, with this frame in mind, I think I can talk about what I wanted to say today for what I'm learning and I have learned, and everyday learning from dogs. And I would like also to say what, taking from Emma, that I'm also speaking now for spiders, I'm also speaking for flies, and sometimes cats speak for me, sometimes. If one day in my wanderings in the Belgian countryside flea markets known as brocante, I would be granted the joy to find an Aladdin lamp, the only thing I would ask the genie for would be to teach me to see the world as dogs do. And in case I would be granted a second wish, which is not taken for granted, I would like to know also, what do they see in us that makes them love us? Of course, my first idea would have been to ask to get as many dogs as my heart would like to have, but I'm not sure this would have been a very good idea. In the end, I may get a better deal by knowing how they ultimately see us. And not only see, of course, but what do they think about us, how they figure out us without any handbook, just as they witness our daily struggles and lack of skills for so many practical and mundane endeavors. I try to remember the first thing that I have ever learned from a dog. One clear image comes to my mind. I was something like 3 or 4, and there in the backyard, there was this white dog, Zalinka. She was chained, but somehow oblivious to her chain and resigned. And she was looking at me. And when our eyes met, she had just wagged her tail and her eyes brightened. I do not remember really having a genuine relationship with her. And it took me many more years to learn how to express as nicely and easily my pleasure to greet someone as she taught me that day. In dog terms, for many years of my life, even I'd had a tail, I would not have been able to wag it. This is to say that it took me many years to unlearn the uneasiness I felt when I liked someone or something, and to unlearn the damaging habit of passing in a split second from deep joy to the intolerable thought that beings or things that I loved would be taken away from me. Many years later, I have read Brené Brown's books where she described exactly the deep pain stemming from this senseless jumping from pure joy to deep fear of losing what is the dearest to me. I have discovered mindfulness in action in a workshop with horses and realized the steep mountain a step ahead of me was less about learning complicated science as it was about slowing down, breathing deep, and reconnected with the wisdom of my body. 12 years forward, I find myself in a much better place, and I know how much of it I owe to spending my life with these mindfulness masters called Stevie, Karma, Balu, and so on. 7 years ago, I have adopted a dog that was introduced to me as a very traumatized dog, whatever it meant to the people who presented him to me. Maxi spent 5 beautiful years with us. He arrived as a very shy dog, wary of most of the humans, particularly men, and unable to tell the dog use of a tennis ball. When he grew older, he went back to being a puppy, jumping and barking playfully. Life with him was a new world for me, as he would stress at any sudden noise or movement. I had to meet him to realize that my life did not observe any speed limit, on the contrary. Funny, it was with him that slow was added to my default speed. I remember myself walking him and Stevie to the park and getting nervous that he would stop at every single tree to sniff before getting to the park, which took at times more than half an hour for a normally 5-minute walk. It took me time to learn how this was happiness and living in the moment, and how my human way to look at the world was flawed and senseless. Max and some other dogs that I have rescued from difficult and complex situations taught me all I know about resilience and the ability to adapt to what life proposes you. Syria, a tiny beige terrier rescued back in 2014 in a godforsaken village of Romania, where she'd been crawling for months after a car accident which almost killed her. She is now a wise old dog happily adopted in France. Or her spiritual sister, Mura, a shepherd dog somewhere near Deva, also in Romania, who went from being a shepherd dog to be caught brutally by dog catchers and put on the death list in a killing public shelter. Rescued and healed from there, she is now spending her days literally on a designed red velvet sofa in her new and only family that she had known. They do not teach us only about their strengths and skills. They do not only show us how to trust the process, have a positive regard on life, and live in the moment. They also teach us how to find in ourselves the skills, the strengths to connect with other humans, how to trust each other and stay with a positive mindset even when things do not look positive at all. They also teach us how to trust ourselves, which is maybe the most difficult lesson to learn of all. All the dogs I know are moonlighting as emotional support dogs. They sense and mirror back to us if we are intelligent enough to get the hint. Whenever something is happening silently in our lives or homes, from sickness to a problematic teenager or to an ailing couple life. They sniff our sadness and our joys, and they sniff grass as they sniff grass and trees, and that dead bird on a specific spot during the walks. We humans are quite good at exploiting their natural competencies, and we talk more and more about service dogs, working dogs, security dogs, guide dogs, emotional support dogs. There are dogs able to sniff illnesses from cancer, epilepsy, diabetes to COVID-19. It saddens me at times to see how we are exploiting the needed care they should get in exchange. Because dogs also can get in burnout, they can also develop emotional imbalances. As humans, we should be able to frame better their intervention and protect them better, not only from our own excesses, but also from their sometimes excessive love. One other thing that they teach us greatly is to be non-judgmental. I have not met many humans as competent as dogs in terms of non-judgment. They seem to be able to capture and process better than any human something more precious and genuine of ourselves than appearance, clothes. To recap a bit all the things that dogs teach us with humility and joy, it's
Sorry, so it's not me who froze? Okay. We'll just wait and hope for the best. Come back, Daniela.
Come back.
Oh no.
I think she was starting to, she's dropped off.
That's
I think she was just wrapping up. So what would you like to do, Magda?
I think maybe let's move on because we're not sure how long she's going to come back. But
Right.
yeah, I have tears in my eyes because I'm thinking of all the paparonos who have tough lives. And it's so lovely that they get rescued, but also it drives me crazy that they have to be rescued in the first place. And also my dog has gotten me through so many bad things in life. I mean, honestly, the last 10 years, if I think of all the downs, if it wasn't for this dog, I don't know if I'd still be here. The non-judgmental ness of dogs and the fact that they know just when to interject. Yeah, I'm a #1 fan of dogs. But I think, okay, she's back, so let's see. Let's see.
The technology.
Yay. That's okay. We were just.
Where have you lost me?
We think we were just wrapping up.
Okay, so I'm going to wrap up now. So I think I will just go back to one paragraph before. So seeing things like this, it makes better sense to me how and why I go to coaching, because sometimes I think that being a coach is the closest things to being a dog. I could not find the exact context, but I'm almost convinced that when Carl Rogers spoke about unconditional positive regard to be had towards the coachee or the client, he was basically describing what he had consistently seen in his dog. Or at least, as it reportedly said oftenly in animal-assisted therapy, all dogs have read Carl Rogers. For these reasons, I have said in the beginning that I would ask the genie to award me the capacity to see the world as dogs do. Because most of the time, their world is much richer in beauty, interesting smells, good people than ours. Or, do you think I should simply ask to become a dog in the next reincarnation? I'm considering it seriously. You can cuddle him, yes.
Thank you, Daniela. I hear so many similarities, what you're speaking about with cats and dogs, horses, so many other animals that I know, just this theme of leadership not being about domination, just really important. We don't see that in the natural world. And this piece about slowing down and really dropping into our bodies, because that's where our wisdom lies. And of course, you know, animals are such an embodied intelligence, and we've been domesticated away from that kind of intelligence. So we're all so many of us are just up here. So there's so much intelligence down in our body and slowing down. So thank you. I really loved listening to you both. So Magda, please interrupt me if any weird technology happens that I'm not aware of. It's just totally fine. So, you know, I love this topic because we're definitely in unprecedented times, and we're being asked to solve problems differently than the way that certainly we've created the problems that we're seeing in our world right now. Many institutions are melting down and falling apart around the world. Climate change and the racial dialogues and important conversations that are happening, just to name a few things that are on our list. But we're also seeing, you know, nuclear proliferation and many things that are, and AI, artificial intelligence. Many challenges are coming our way, sort of a tsunami. So leadership is where I'd like to kind of take things today. And I define leadership really broadly. If anybody relies on you in any way, then you're a leader. So what if you had a really ancient teacher, a teacher who is millions and millions of years old, a teacher who was here to teach you about leadership, how to lead your life and how to lead your organizations, your families. And what if this teacher was so ancient that it had lived through tectonic shifts and climate swings and comets and pandemics, oceans rising and falling, ice ages? If you had that leadership mentor, what would you want to ask them? What would you want to learn from them? And I'd love to just open up the chat a little bit here. If you had a really, really ancient leadership mentor, what were some of the things you would ask? Chat has gone silent.
Because it's a hard question.
Yeah, spend a minute with it. What would you ask? I think one of the things that I started to ask myself when I was in the company of the natural world was, what is it that I don't know that I need to know? You know, what makes a good person? This is what what's the highest expression of humanity? These are great questions. Yeah. How can we best live? Really great questions. What's fun about these questions is, what's the best creature? No favorites. What's fun about these questions is that you really can take these questions to the natural world. You can engage with the natural world, whether it be an animal or a tree or a boulder or a river. You can take these important questions to the natural world. How can I best serve? How can I access the ability to do that? You can actively take these questions. Very often we're talking to animals, we're not listening, we're not asking them questions. And what's even more important is you can ask questions about things that are deeply existential. And when you ask these questions and start to listen, you'll be amazed what kind of answers come forward. So there's a 56 million year old system that could be that teacher for you. I'm a master certified coach. I'm the founding partner of an organization called Equus. We're a leadership development and coaching organization, and we create experiential conditions for breakthrough learning for our clients. We're in the business of really helping people make their dreams come true, however they define that, being the people that they want to be, being the best version of themselves, and also leading their companies and their lives differently, altogether differently. But I'm also a lover of the natural world. I'm a backpacker, a hiker. I love to go camping. I spend a lot of my time outdoors. I love hanging out under the stars. And I find that being in that natural environment allows me to access something much broader and much more vast than my own individual consciousness. I get to feel and experience that I'm not an observer to the natural world, that I am in fact a part of the natural world, that I am an equal partner to the multiplicity of the all. And so that is where I go to resource myself and find my answers. And I trust that resource much more than my own human understanding of things. Did you know that of all the species that have ever been around on planet Earth, only 1% remain? 99% are now extinct. So 1% remains. The others have either gone extinct or they have sort of morphed into a new species. So the ones that remain they're the ones who've, they've hacked it, basically. They are the survivors, and they have evolved to not only survive these times, but thrive in these modern conditions. So when we turn to nature for our answers about how to deal with the challenges that we're facing, there's actually a field known as biomimicry. Biomimicry is a discipline, a scientific field that looks to nature, 3.8 billion years of intelligence and nature's intelligence, to answer really complex problems. Everything from structural issues, design and engineering, to organizational culture, and community initiatives. So biomimicry is a great term, and in many ways, what Emma and Daniela and I are talking about is biomimicry. I personally turn to a very specific teacher most of the time, and that is horses. And horses have taught me a lot about leadership and how to be a better human, and how to love better, how to listen, how to do things in a way that is not as sort of linear and limited as a human contextual way of dealing with things. And I'm just going to share a screen with you. In Equus, there is a award-winning process that we have called the Equus Experience, and it's where we bring people into conversation with horses on the ground. We're not riding them, and it's an award-winning process. So when people come to Equus, they get to work with our co-facilitators, a herd of 6 horses and a donkey. But even if they don't get to come to Equus, a lot of our work as coaches is infused with the pedagogy of the horse, what I will call culture. But let me let you meet our co-facilitators. This is our herd of horses, part of them. This is 4 of them. Left to right, we've got Dante, Cisco, Aiden, and Brio. They are, that's exactly what they look like when people are about to enter the arena. They're deeply curious, they're very gregarious and opinionated, and they love to engage strongly with people. And this, how come it's not, this is their glam shot. Actually, this happened right as a client was entering the arena. There's Dante on the left, blue, Aiden at back, and Artemis, our alpha mare. She is there on the right. So why horses? And actually, I'm going to stay sharing here. Why horses? I want to show you something. Horses are actually, we are known as paleontological siblings. We often think of ourselves as related to chimpanzees and apes, but we're actually more closely tied to the horse. We have the same metatarsals, fibulas, tibias, so much so that Scientific American published this image to show our kinship. We are in biological kinship with one another. And that there was a time a long time ago when we were actually the same stem animal. So this deep partnership it allows us to kind of attune to one another in ways that are not just emotional, but biological. And another reason why horses are such great teachers, and this is the part I really want to share with you, because you can learn this now. You don't have to be near a horse to do this. It's just to understand their culture, and because their culture has a lot to share with us about how we can lead differently. So I call it a culture only because this is a little bit outside of equine behavioral sciences. This comes from, and it's not well known through conventional horsemanship and equestrian ideologies. And but after observing horses for about 50 years and observing wild horse herds and domesticated herds, I feel like it's a fairly solid summary of how horses organize themselves. And I'll just share this again. So the horse organizes itself around 5 very core principles, and they're there in the center: safety, connection, peace, joy, and freedom. So as their human, it is my job to ensure that these 5 principles are intact: safety, connection, peace, joy, and freedom. The lead horse will ensure these 5 principles through 2, I'll call them superpowers, care and presence. So the horse herd system is based on a servant and caring model of leadership. And that whole conventional view, again, just to reflect back to what Emma said, of the dominance version of leadership does not apply here. The stallions have their role, but it's not leadership. The leader is selected. She both appoints herself and is selected based on her capacity to care deeply for the whole and each individual member of the herd, and to be really, really present, because she has to be present to every subtle change in the environment. As animals of prey, if you miss a cue and are not present to a subtle cue in the environment, then you become lunch. You don't just miss lunch like a lion would, you become lunch. So they're highly sensitive. We as humans, we are not just predators. We are also prey. We're omnivores. And so when we tune into the animal of prey side of our brain, we allow ourselves to be more attuned, more present, to be more sensitive to our environment, to care for the whole rather than just the individual. So horses invite us into that part of our brain that really does lean into that cooperative, collective way of being. And instead of it being a hierarchy with the kind of lead horse on top and the sort of, weakest horse at the bottom, it's a lateral hierarchy. It's flat. And so every horse has their role, and everyone has an important part to play. The one who's at the bottom, even though there's not really bottom, is the one who needs the most care. So in our case here, that would be Cassie, the donkey. Cassie needs the most care because she has the shortest legs. She's incredibly intelligent. She's just as smart as the alpha mare, but she has the shortest legs. However, her role in the herd is that she is a protector. Donkeys, because they can't run fast, have evolved to be able to turn and fight and fend off. So, packs of wild dogs, coyotes, mountain lions. So if Artemis is taking care of the whole, the lead horse, and Cassie is the one who's the most cared for, Cassie in turn takes care of the whole by being the protector. So you can see how this lateral hierarchy works. So, of course, this system flies in the face of conventional approaches to leadership. We're taught that, the mightiest, the strongest, the most dominant, the most gregarious, the most sort of visible person is the leader. And what's unfortunate about this is that people who are natural leaders, who would naturally serve in this way that the horses do, tend to not think of themselves as leaders, and so they bow out of leadership positions. When in fact, the leader tends to be smaller, quieter, moving slower, slightly more considered, and very, very empathetic. And so I'll just open the chat again. What would happen in our world if we led by keeping these values intact of safety, connection, peace, joy, and freedom? And what would our world be like if we selected our leaders and appointed our leaders in our schools and our governments, in our institutions and our businesses that were the most caring and the most present? What do you think would shift? I'd just love to hear from everybody. We'd all walk around safely. That's a big thing. We could all elevate, all contribute, all come along. Yes, absolutely. No war. Everyone would have a chance to live up to their potential more. The rising tide, everyone works together to rise. Belonging, based on value. Intrinsic value, I would add, that because you are, simply because you are a member of the human community, you have value, therefore you belong. Yeah, great, wonderful. So a lot of our conventional methodologies of leadership have, they've not been informed by ancient wisdom. They've not been informed by nature. We mostly inherited our leadership structure through, a relatively new ideology, in comparison to 3.8 billion years of nature. We've inherited it from military structures, mostly, and never really asked, well, is this real leadership? Is this what leadership really is? If we turn to the natural world, the natural world would say no. And it's really interesting to watch CEOs and leaders go into our arena of 6 horses and a donkey, try and lead in the way that they've been taught in business school. And it doesn't work. They're not respected. They're not listened to. Sometimes they are mocked. And it doesn't take long until they are very lovingly convinced that there is a new way that is much, much more powerful. So I call those who lead in this non-oppressive way, in this collaborative way, I call them awake leaders. And these are the cutting edge leaders. And I believe, given that 56 million years of survival has been honed through this kind of leadership, that there may be something in it for us as well. And it starts with us deliberately creating environments of safety, connection, peace, joy, and freedom. And so I'm going to share the screen one more time and get that little Venn diagram up again. And I'm going to invite you all to do something really quickly. And let's see if we can do this. Check it out again and consider these principles in your own life. And at the very top of your screen, if you take your little arrow, your cursor, and it go all the way to the top, and it says you're seeing, I think, Kelly Wendorf's screen. And just next to it to the right, this is really fun, it has a drop-down menu, it says more options. And you click that arrow, and there is a capacity to make stamps. So if you can do this, put a stamp with a little star or a little heart somewhere on this shared slide where you would like to develop your leadership more. And we'll all see it. I've just learned how to do this. We'll see if it works. Put a little stamp. Magda, do you see it there? Yeah.
Mine says
Magda, there you go.
I put a squiggly. Got it. Okay, so you click on annotate and then you can select stamp. Now I know how it works.
Click annotate. So joy, yes, me too. Freedom, beautiful. We've got another peace, care. And just annotate where, yes, thanks, it says annotate, where you would like to develop your leadership more. I have no idea how many people are up. Connection, presence. Great.
Yeah, Kelly, just FYI, you're sharing your entire screen, not just the image.
Oh, thank you.
Which is okay. Now we know that you were prepared with your notes.
Yeah. There they are. So, I guess just in summary, think about that model. And think about some of the ways that you could bring those things into your life and your leadership. And start to notice what happens when you do bring in more joy, not just in your own life, but in the lives of the people that you serve. I have a book coming out. Do I get to advertise shamelessly, Magda? Yeah, great. Here it is. It's called Flying Lead Change. Yeah, right. It gets released in a few days. There's pre-orders available. I'll put in the chat where you can click to order the book. And it's, as Daniela said, it's not about horses, it's about humans. This is about humans becoming better humans, and about how coaches also can assist people to be the humans they want to be. So I'll type that in.
I'm going to also interrupt you
so
because I have another thing to plug, because not only do you have a book, but also there's a session you're doing on building a better human later in Awake, Aware, Arise. So everyone please come to that. And I am now going to put you in a spot, and I'm roping Kelly in to maybe do a little mini course, little masterclass, coach training type thing based on what she has in the book. So watch for that in February 2021.
That's right. That's happening. That's a yes. So let's maybe open up the floor. I'm just looking at the time here. Oh gosh. So maybe just it's already 9. We've got, or top of the hour. So we've got about 30 minutes for question and answer. Maybe we go straight to question and answer and let people ask some questions, and Emma and Daniela and I can just take it from there. Magda, are you okay to field the questions?
I will happily field the questions. I need to think of some too, because I've been listening.
Okay, great.
Instead
Awesome.
of thinking of questions. So everyone, questions, bring them on. Panelists, do you have questions for each other by any chance?
Well, I do. I do for Emma and Daniela. A question I had was, because I was super inspired by this slowing down and the wisdom of the body, and I just I wonder if you could speak more about that. How slowing down and dropping into your body, assists you in not only understanding animals but other humans better as well.
Emma and Daniela, do you want to answer?
I think Daniela's thinking, or she's writing her question.
She's practicing it. She's practicing it right now. Right? She's slowing down. She's considering. Yeah.
But is she going to answer? Okay, Daniela, do you want to answer the question, or?
Sure, I can give my part of the answer, but I'm sure that Emma has a lot to say on that as well. This was, as Carl Rogers says, it's facts, it's experience. I have experienced it with this specific dog, who was very, very, very shy, and every movement had to be very, very slow and very considerate, and taking into account his reactions and so on. And in the end, it became a dance. In the beginning, it was more complicated for me because I was not used to that. But finally, it became my second nature. It became a way to move. And I could see how people around me noticed that something has changed. I didn't. I knew that something changed because people told me. And in the beginning, I didn't know how it happened and why. And little by little, I've extended that from dog to myself, being as nice to myself as I was to my dogs, which was another step. And you see, building up incrementally, small step, baby steps, turtle steps. And you get, at some point, you get where you can listen. You know that you get more from listening. And you get to support and to accompany better all the people, or your clients, let's call them clients, the coaches, than by just giving advice. I hear still a lot of people saying, oh, I want to be a coach because I have so many things to give people. I don't have so many. I don't have any more those things to give people. I only have myself to give them. My presence, my listening, my silence. It's not much. I remember a friend who said in the beginning, when he was younger, he wanted to be a coach, and he wanted to have a sort of place in the marketplace where to put there, and he had a board saying answers given here. And as he learned more, he said, now I would like to have questions asked.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think, well, so many of my, it's my sole piece of advice. I mean, I work with dogs who have got huge behavioural problems, having huge problems adapting into society, and the only advice that I give consistently to their human companions is slow down. And when they start telling me, you know, we're going really slow, and I'm kind of like, I don't apologize for it. The clients that I've had this afternoon, we've been working for probably 2 months, I think, and she said, oh, I asked her how she was going with one of the things that we've been working on, and she said, oh, we've not done so much. And I said, well, don't worry, you know, it's better to go slow than to rush it. And I always think, you know, so many of those problems resolve themselves just by that slowing down, and taking it easy, rather than, we have this kind of human urge, don't we, to go as fast as we can, to take in. It's almost like life is a roller coaster, and we must go at maximum velocity to get as much out of it as we can. And often so many problems are just solved just by being. And one of the things that I often do, because I'm involved with assessment of some of the dogs when they come into the shelter, and they're struggling in many ways to fit in, and I don't start teaching them things or kind of interacting with them. We just walk, and we may go for, you know, 2 or 3 hours, sometimes just in the forest near, and I just let them be, and I'm observing them all the time and seeing how they react to me, and by the end it's kind of almost as if I'm just another part of the environment, which is exactly what I need, I need them to understand. So slow down is kind of like my one mantra, if you like, when I'm working with people who've got problem behaviors, because you do see that progress. And it just, that's why I think it's also important, though, for us to make a record of that progress and how we're moving on, because sometimes when progress is glacial, like the world can be glacial, sometimes it becomes hard to see it, and then we get frustrated as humans because we can't see things going as quickly as we want them to. So I think that would be my answer to the question.
Kelly, the next one is for you. There are actually two, and I'll put them together. So someone asked if you could compare the horse's leadership model with ours, I'm guessing humans, not just in terms of hierarchy, but, you know, in general. And then related to that, somebody else was asking if the ladder hierarchy is to be introduced in humans, I suppose. Where do you start, since people aren't used to that structure?
Yeah, that's a great question. It depends too on where your orientation is on that, you know, on that vertical hierarchy, right? So if you're the leader in the vertical hierarchy, then you can use your privilege to start to flatten things. And it comes from, you start to become more vulnerable as a leader. You listen more. And there's a whole chapter in my book, Flying Lead Change, around leading from behind. So you lead from behind by really empowering others to be out front and really shine. The more you kind of disappear in terms of showiness and having the answers and empower others, and in a family structure, it's the same. The more you empower the young people in your family to lead their own way forward, then the more things start to flatten. So flattening happens through certain qualities: listening, enabling others, slowing down, thinking things through. It takes a little longer. You may come up with a different, if you slow down and listen, you may come up with a different solution than just the rote solution that keeps this vertical hierarchy intact. Pay close attention, because we are an oppressive society. The entire world is in the soup of oppression. We were raised in oppression. We were taught through oppressive principles and mindsets since 12,000 years. So we have 12,000 years of oppression to undo. So there's things too in terms of making sure that your families and your organizations are really literate to the ways that we unintentionally create separation and keep this sort of caste system alive by subtle acts of inequities through things we say, through things we do. It's really important that we be literate in that way so that we're not accidentally, I would imagine most of us on this call would never overtly do that, but accidentally, especially white people of privilege, we accidentally other people by excluding them in super subtle ways, by really just things we don't even know that we're saying. So get really educated about that as well. That's going to help to go like this. Those are just some of the things off the top of my head. The question about comparing human to horse, I don't believe this is about horses as much as it is about the natural world. It's just so obvious in a horse herd because you're dealing with all these enormous animals and how they organize themselves. But really, this is about the natural way of being. If you look at indigenous societies, it's very similar. I'm not sure that this is true, but what I'd heard is that many explorers befriended war chiefs in indigenous society and called them the chiefs, but they were just the war chiefs. They weren't the real chiefs. The real chiefs were more quiet, more in the background, being caring and present. And so we mistook the war chiefs for the real chiefs because we thought war chiefs with their, their strength and their domination and their power and their might were the chiefs. So really this is about returning to or accessing a way that has been quite natural to us way long before. And if we could integrate that back into our lives as leaders, then we're not trying to be like horses. We're just bringing back a natural aspect of ourselves and accessing it for the betterment of our organizations and our families and our communities. So
there's a few more questions, but I just want to share two things that came up for me. One of them is my lovely sailor dog, who's like the chillest, nicest dog on the planet. Whenever we go to a dog park or just anywhere where there's other dogs and they're being rambunctious, it's like all of a sudden everybody reorganizes and he's just, sniffing around, being quiet, and the others follow him. It's so funny how like his presence is what the other dogs respond to. Just want to share because he's handsome and wonderful. And Ram often talks about, when we talk about the place of a coach, and a lot of people, some people seek out a coach because they're actually wanting a guru. And I was like, no, gurus, like let's not even go there. Like you shouldn't be, I'm here as the coach and you're here. Like we should be here. Or if anything, the coach should be below the rest. So it's a lot of these things are resonating with me from the animal world.
Yeah, it's true. When you were talking about the lateral hierarchy, that's the coach, isn't it? That's the relationship that we have with our clients, the same relationship that we have with our animals. And I think the more we move away from that hierarchy, the better it's going to be for everybody, because we are our own guru and we know where, as you said, that deep-seated wisdom really is within us all. And we've got that kind of learned helplessness, haven't we, that we get into ruts where we can't see ways forward because every opportunity we've had in the past to lead our own way, we've been thwarted. And so that where society has really, thwarted us in our attempts to find our own solutions to things actually leads us into a state where we just don't do anything and we just shut down. And I see that so often with animals who've just given up trying to do anything differently because every attempt that they've made to lead their own way has been thwarted. So I think that's really important that we see that lateral hierarchy and in so many aspects of our relationships with other beings.
Someone asked about, is working with animals a good idea for young people, for kids, young people in general, as a means to kind of start them thinking on this lateral hierarchy? What do you think?
For me, all the evidence that we have about how children think about animals is they don't see a hierarchy. And we think about the things that we create for children. We create books where animals speak. You think about the programs that children watch, like Peppa Pig and so on, where animals have a voice. And we lose those things as we grow up. You know, when was the last time that you read an adult book with the voice of an animal? And yet this is what our children, this is how their children think, that they don't think that their minds are different than ours, that we're separate from them, that there's some kind of power hierarchy. And I think one of the hardest things as a parent is navigating that where does our food come from, mummy, kind of conversations, where you're having to explain, you know, that the chicken that we're eating is the same as a chicken in the garden. And a lot of children find that a very difficult moment in their lives, and a lot of children start refusing to eat things because, you know, they can't reconcile how we're living with animals, with eating animals in the same kind of way. So everything we know about young children and a developmental cycle really supports this notion that children have an instinctive way of being with animals, that perhaps others, they've got that ancient wisdom, they're born with that ancient wisdom of this respect and appreciating animals for their own individual, for their personalities, for them as beings, as having that kind of being a you rather than being an it, or you know, something that they can't have a conversation with. And so I think for me, it's us as adults who've got to learn, not the children. So yes, I think it's a great idea for children to be involved with animals, to be more animal, and I think more we've got to learn about it as we grow up, not to let those ancient wisdoms die. And to get to the point where we stop listening to, and it becomes almost it becomes almost a moment of our development, doesn't it, where we stop listening to the animals' voices, and we stop imagining what they might be thinking and saying, and it's seen as being childish or atavistic or primitive in some kind of way. And I think it's more important that we keep that intelligence alive as we grow up. For me.
I love that. I think I said this to you all before when we thought of this panel. I think we should have a course just on this topic, because yeah, we would be better off as a planet, as a society, as cultures, as everything, if we learned from animals and, like you said, keep that childhood approach that we lose at some point. And on a side note, by the way, you mentioned food. There is another panel later in the series with Michael Fox, who is a founder of a company that uses mushrooms to make meat-like products. So you guys should check that out. We have a couple other questions. I'm going to go in order. So Mervyn asked earlier if the panelists can give us some thoughts on what to do when the guardian of the animal becomes terminally ill. And both the person is concerned about what's going to happen to the animal, but I'm pretty sure the animal is also, especially if it's a dog, they know, like you mentioned before, they can smell cancer, etc. So they know what's going on. So what do you do in this kind of situation?
For me, for our shelter, about 15% of our dogs come as surrenders. And quite a number of those come from their human companions having died. And it can be very challenging. For instance, we were called by the police to a situation in which a homeless person who'd been squatting in a place had died 5 days earlier, and his dogs had been left with the corpse. And the police were unable to remove the dogs. The dogs were protecting the body. And so I just read this morning an article that reminded me, there's a really good book called The Genius of Birds by Jennifer Ackerman. And there are other books as well that we have to stop this notion, don't we, that humans are the only ones that are aware of life and that we're aware of death, because animals are very conscious of life and death. And from what we know, for instance, when mothers are taken from, when their children are taken from them, for instance, I live surrounded by Limousin beef, and the day that the calves are taken from their mothers is the day when there is enormous, the cows are screaming, they're agitated, there's a lot, it's a horrific moment. So animals are aware of those separations and aware of those deaths. And the article that I read this morning was interesting, just reminding us that we're not the only species, that we never are the only species to have such concepts. And I think it depends very much on the dog. I know there have been a number of dogs that have really suffered to adjust once their owner has died. And I know others as well who have, just as humans do, have had relief from that death. For instance, at the moment I'm working with a couple, the husband's got vascular dementia and he'd ended up kicking the dog because he's angry and he doesn't understand, and you know, he's just not conscious of what he's doing anymore. And it's a very difficult situation because he will be removed from the situation eventually, but then the wife needs the dog as her emotional support and can't think of a life without the dog, because the dog is going to outlive perhaps the husband, and the dog is her future. And so we've got those before death moments as well, that can be difficult and tricky to navigate as well. Ideally, we'd all love to, I have arrangements, I'm sure lots of people have, about what will happen to my dogs as to where they will go after, and the same, I guess, with I think that's the sensible thing to do, is to know that eventually we might get into that moment where we might outlive our pets, or also, you know, that we might need to give them up for other reasons as well. So that in itself can be a challenge. I don't think there's an easy answer, and I think we need to take each relationship as something quite different, because it depends on the animal, I think.
My heart is breaking a little bit right now, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna move to the next question unless Kelly and Daniela want to jump in, or I'm just gonna let you guys unmute if you want to jump in. Andrew is asking, what suggestions do you have to support people in this fast-paced world to slow down in order to tune in and listen to our animal teachers? Daniela, Kelly, Emma, anybody?
Just be more animal.
Well, I would advise people to get out in nature in any way that they can, as often as possible, you know, and it doesn't have to be like some grand forest or anything. It can be a park, it can be your backyard, hanging out with a favorite tree. The electromagnetic field of the natural world will positively inform your body, and you'll naturally, your whole nervous system, it works on the parasympathetic part of the nervous system, and which is the rest and digest and the ease, peaceful place. So I rather than trying to physically force myself to slow down, which I don't do very well, I just find it a lot easier to access, whether it's looking at a cloud for a moment outside the office window and just casting my eye or my attention in some way to the natural world. And you'll begin to notice that everything starts to slow down. What you can do on top of that as well is, if you feel like it, is track somatically, meaning track viscerally in your body, how it feels to slow down. Where do you feel it? Do you feel it in your belly and your solar plexus and your thighs? Do you feel your feet on the ground? And track that somatically. And then, and this is a cool thing, you can turn that state, that felt state of slowness, into a trait by simply returning to that felt sense 2 or 3 times a day for 2 minutes. Just right when you wake up in the morning, before you jump out of bed, close your eyes, conjure that felt sense of being slow or being slowed by looking at the sunset. Just remember that, and feel it in your body before you jump out of bed. And the more you do that, the more you're going to create neural receptors that will be availed to slowness, and you become slower. So that's what I would advise.
Emma Jane, do you want to say something? You started speaking before.
No, I think somebody has added to the chat that finding something to focus on is very helpful, and I often notice that with dogs as well. I always say, you know, nose down is a good thing when they're investigating the environment and they're in the moment, and that's great. It's when the nose comes up and they visually fixate on something that they then get anxious about it. So immersing ourselves in the environment is a really helpful way, I think, for us to slow down. And I like, you know, probably very strange, but I like to know what my dogs are interested in. You know, what is that interesting smell that's there? What is it that you know, has been past this tree? What's interesting there? So I think I agree with that it's very much about finding something to focus on at the first. It can be very disconcerting, can't it, to just have nothing to focus on? And that's why what Kelly said about going outside into the environment and checking out your favorite trees is the essential bit, I think, for me.
And also learn from cats. This is the best moment to learn from cats. Have you ever seen a cat rushing anywhere? Unless she was scared or anything. I mean, it's where cats lead by example. The way they sit in the sun. Be a cat for 5 minutes a day, or for 3 minutes a day, for 30 seconds a day. Just be a cat.
That should be a book.
Magda,
you should write that. Be a cat.
Magda, we have this handout for everybody with a list of, Daniela put it together. It's super comprehensive, and it's got books and films and all kinds of things. Cats, dogs, octopuses. Octopi? Octopus?
I think they're both correct.
Yeah, I think so.
So how do people get that handout?
I can put it on our website, but I did not do that yet. So why don't you lovely people come back to Coacharia's website, coacharia.com/blog. I'll put it on the blog along with a recording of this video by tomorrow. Is that cool?
I will send it to you because I haven't sent it to you. One of the reasons I didn't put it on the website is because I didn't send it to you.
I don't think we can put it in the chat. Can we share a document on chat? I don't think we can.
Just download the document.
It's a mix. I would like to make a list of it because I've tried to put it as book covers, and it's heavier.
Okay, yeah, I will add it. I will add it to the blog tomorrow, and I will send out an email with a digest of everything that's happened this week tomorrow to everyone. So even if you forget, you will get a reminder. But I also have a tip to add about slowing down. So one thing, right now I work from home, and I'm fully at home because, you know, Coacharia's everywhere. But before that, I was working from home, but remotely for other companies. So I would travel quite a bit internationally and within the United States. And whenever I was somewhere and feeling stressed or just overwhelmed, I literally would find a dog park and I would sit usually under a tree or on a bench, and without fail, the right kind of dog for the right kind of energy that I needed at that moment would show up. I literally would have dogs who would jump up on my lap and just hang out when they needed, you know, and then I can relax and slow down. And people would come up to me like, oh, what's your dog's name? I'm like, I don't know, it's not my dog. Or if, you know, I was feeling kind of down in energy, I would have a dog bring me a Frisbee or a ball so I could throw it for them. They know what they're doing. So I highly recommend just find a park and the right dog will come and help you with whatever it is you need at the time. Or a cat. There's a cat actually in my neighborhood that's called Carmel. And he also kind of hangs out and says hello. Anyway, cats are great too. We do have to wrap up because we're at the time, and I love this session. Like I said, let's make this a course. Let's make this like mandatory adulting 101. How do we take all the wonderful things that animals teach us and apply it to our life, to our leadership, to our everything? Honestly, guys, name a problem, I dare you, that we could not fix if we behaved more like animals.
Thank you so much, Magda. Thank you so much for the time. And thank you, Emma and Daniela, to share this time with you.
Yeah, any parting thoughts from you, ladies? If there's like one piece of advice that you can give to our participants and those who watch this later, what is that one piece of advice? And you can't say the cat thing again.
Schedule time with yourself. Schedule me time.
I think for me, it's inhabit other minds, really get in there and root around and know how it feels.
For me, it would be trust the vulnerable, empathetic, sensitive, emotional part of you.
For me, it's go and adopt an animal.
Yes.
Call any of us. I'm sure we have several that we could send your way. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you so much, attendees, and those of you who are watching this later. It's been a pleasure and a great learning experience and a bit of a teary eye for me. You can find Kelly's book on Kelly's website. I'll link to it in the notes, and you can come join us for a session where she talks about building a better human, where you can learn more about it. Emma, do you have a book? Because you really should.
I don't know. I don't. Although I have got some courses that we've designed about human-animal interactions for the Dog Genius.
Okay.
So we're looking at the relationship that dogs have with human beings.
Oh, I love that. Daniela, you're writing on about cats. Huh?
We'll share all the links in the list we have.
Yeah, excellent. I'm just saying that the both of you should write different books about the different things. And next year, we can have a panel on horses, dogs, and cats, and have a whole curriculum.
Guys and octopuses.
Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you at the next session.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.